Story on a Friday. Hello to you.
Good morning. It's good to be here with you. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's
I like
Newsroom.
your red, by the way.
Yeah, everyone's wearing red today. Go red because Heart Health Month, indeed, right? All right. So, FAR police arrested 7 migrants in connection with that attack. Most of them were charged and released without bail. 5 of them may have taken advantage of that by catching a bus to California.
And that's where they will hit the lottery. Once you're in California, you're entitled to housing assistance, food stamps, cash payouts, health care, and financial aid for college someday.
All of this showing how the chaos at the border is making the crime crisis work. I appeared with former NYPD Inspector Paul Morrow. He's a Fox News contributor. That was on Fox and Friends. Watch this.
The idea that quality of life is going down is, in my eyes, irrefutable to anybody who lives in reality in one of our blue cities, certainly in New York, and I live here. It's amazing that the cops are still out there doing this kind of work.
Retired NYPD Lieutenant Joe Cardinale is going to be here, but we begin with CB Cotton in Times Square. Hi, CB.
Dana, good morning. 5 of the migrant men who were charged with felony assault but still released without cash bail have 2 upcoming court dates between February and March in this case. As to whether they'll show up has yet to be seen, because now prosecutors and the NYPD are investigating a report that some of these men are now on the run. Police sources telling me some of these suspects may be headed for Calexico, California, a community situated right on the border with Mexico. My sources also tell me workers recognized these mugshots from the news and alerted them, saying the men had used fake names before boarding the bus to California. Now all eyes are on Judge Marisol Martinez Alonso and DA Alvin Bragg, who oversaw the decision to release these suspects without bail. A spokesperson for the Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, chalked up that decision at the time by saying, in part, "It is paramount that we conclusively identify each defendant and specify each participant's role in the incident." A 6th suspect, Yohenry Brito, was arraigned in court yesterday. So far, the only suspect to be held in jail. His bail set at $15,000. Police say Brito was the man in the yellow who resisted arrest, leading to the brawl. The head of the police union says he wants to know why others involved are not sitting with Brito behind bars.
Why aren't they in jail right now? They brutally attacked a New York City police officer and a lieutenant. Our criminal justice system is upside down. It fails every day.
Police sources telling me the NYPD has identified at least a dozen other men involved in the initial assault. Now officers looking for those suspects. Back to you.
All right, CB, thank you.
So with us in studio, retired NYPD Lieutenant Joe Cardinale. And Joe, good morning to you. Nice to have you back here in person here. Here are the 7 involved. Put them on screen. Here are the names, etc. Some of them have been in the country a very short time, and some of them have been arrested multiple times already. The New York Post is reporting that one of these church-affiliated nonprofit groups helped them get on a bus. And someone did that, right, Joe?
Absolutely.
And someone helped them with the ID to get them on the bus.
On the bus.
So someone knows exactly where they are at this hour. Does the city have the guts to bring them back and pursue justice?
Absolutely not. Not with this DA. The cops will do their job. The judges won't do their job. And this DA is the nexus for all that's going on in Manhattan right now. How many times are we going to watch this as cops are getting beat up? This isn't the first time. And Pat, Mr. Hendry is correct. This criminal justice system is geared for the criminals. It's not geared for what it used to be, for your everyday John Q. citizen. It's geared for the criminals because they get the advantage of knowing nothing's going to happen to them when they commit these crimes. This would never happen in days of old, all right, because the cops would have the guts to get up there, and they would have the backing of the city council to go out there and do their job. And we're not talking about cops going out of control. We're talking about giving them the indemnification they need to go out and do the job. They're afraid to use a nightstick. They're afraid to use mace because everything is going to be held against them. I spoke to some of the cops, and their hands are literally tied, and they have to sit there and take a beating like this because they know the only thing that's going to show is that they take that, if they have the nightstick, take that nightstick out and use the necessary force to effect that arrest, they're going to be prosecuted. Just like the cop, Provenzano, in the Apple store. Bragg went after him, and he's still in trial for that right now, and he's still paying the price for it, and the guy who should have been arrested is out there doing the same thing.
So if these migrants are on a bus from New York to the border in California, that I'm sure there's cooperation with local law enforcement, but would New York Police Department be sending detectives out along that route to try to catch them?
If they know the bus, I would have that bus stopped. I would take them off that bus and I would bring them back. They should be deported immediately, all right? Because they're never going to show up for trial. All right, that's a given. They're not going to show up for trial.
You deport them, they cross the border again?
Yeah, and they cross the border again, but at least this time, the only advantage right now is you have their fingerprints and you know who they are. All right, what good that's going to do in the future with the revolving door we have at the border and in the city. I mean, it's ridiculous and it's laughable, but it's to the extent that, you know, the only time politicians are going to do something is when it affects them directly.
It is getting widespread media coverage across the board. So sometimes there's a case that changes things, makes a difference. And Alvin Bragg is taking it on the chin here. Do you think that this could be the case that helps make a difference?
If it's to his advantage, yes. That's the only time he's going to do it. He's not going to do it at what he's supposed to do. You know, he's there to prosecute, and he doesn't do it. He picks and chooses the crimes he wants to prosecute. And as I said, cops are the easiest target for him, so he'll go after them. You know, Governor Hochul has a part in this as well. She can remove Bragg if she wanted to. He's not doing his job. It's clear he is not doing his job. And her administration is just as guilty for the attack on cops, because when your administration releases 38 cop killers under their corrupt parole board, you know, what do you expect? And it's just a total disregard for police in this city. And as Paul said earlier, it's amazing we have the numbers we have that are still on the job. We're losing them. I mean, we're down 7,000 police officers right now. That's ridiculous.
I thanked a police officer the other day by text that I know, and I said, you know, I'm sorry for the people that attack you. And he said, but there are so many more people who are innocent who deserve our protection, and that's why we do it every day. And that's why we thank everyone who's serving.
You've got a U.S. Marine who could face charges for trying to,
protect people
on a subway. And his attorney's out there talking. You can't avoid this story. You got the video. You got the illegals. They went to jail. They were sprung within hours. And the way they, double-bird the cameras with glee, you can't avoid this. And that's why others are covering it.
Exactly.
Final thought.
You know, Dana, you're right. They do the job day in and day out. But it's a question of how they do the job. Their hands are tied. They could have done so much more in this case, but they couldn't, because they're not afraid, like they're cowering afraid. That's not what I'm saying. They're afraid of losing their job, being prosecuted, because they see it day in and day out with Bragg, that he's the one going after them, and they know they're going to be the target.
This has been going on for a while, and too long.
And the city council is the biggest blame for this as well, because
100%.
they took the indemnification away from them.
Joe, thanks for coming on.
Great to have you.
Okay.
Thanks for being here.
Joe Cardinale, thank you.
Get you this story. The father of one of the 3 Kansas City Chiefs fans found dead in the snow last month tells Fox Digital that the preliminary toxicology results have been released to police. Sources say multiple substances were found in each of their systems when they died. Nate Foy is live with the latest. Hi, Nate.
Hi, Dana. So according to several news outlets, the men consumed THC, cocaine, and 3 times the amount of fentanyl that can kill. But the initial toxicology findings still don't necessarily explain exactly how the men died. Take a look at the victims here. They were found dead in their friend's backyard 2 days after a party just over 3 weeks ago. They got together after watching a Kansas City Chiefs game. The full toxicology and autopsy reports will show if the drugs killed them or something else, like cardiac arrest from hypothermia in the Kansas City winter.
What happened here, I think, could have been that the 4 of them used the drugs together. The one fellow who comes in and sleeps on the couch indoors sleeps it off, whereas the other 3 get sleepy and pass out outside. And because of the weather and because of the snow, their body temperature drops very quickly.
Dana, the local Fox affiliate in Kansas City reports the men's families met with the Platte County prosecutor, and Kansas City police tell Fox News, quote, the case remains an ongoing death investigation. Both KCPD detectives and the Platte County prosecutor's office have been in touch with the deceased men's families and remain in contact with them as the investigation unfolds. Now, the man who hosted the party and survived, Jordan Willis, is seen here in handcuffs after police found his friend's bodies. Kansas City City police say Willis is not considered a suspect. They do not suspect foul play. A source close to Willis's family says he's since checked himself into rehab. Now, the medical examiner tells Fox that the full autopsy report will likely come out sometime in late March, possibly early April. We'll send it back to you, Dana.
All right. Thank you, Nate.
Here comes this plane going at a 45-degree angle and just boom. It's very surreal. Like you don't realize what you were just watching, right?
This is a mobile home park in Florida, a small plane crashing with deadly results, and what the pilot called in moments before that plane went down. In a moment here. Dana?
And a blockbuster jobs report colliding with a surge in layoffs. So what does it all mean? How the White House is spinning it this morning?
Big number, right? East Palestine has big numbers, too, in Ohio, marking 1 year since the toxic spill that forced thousands from their homes. President Biden will visit there and what the people who live there want to hear. Next.
I didn't have to invite President Trump to come, but I felt that I had to send out a.
When I got out the front door, it exploded, and so I ran over there to make sure everybody was out of the house. But I mean, it was already engulfed in flames, and stuff was just popping everywhere.
So that is a witness recalling what happened last night. A small plane crashing into a mobile home park, Clearwater, Florida. The pilot's dead. 2 people on the ground are dead. FAA officials saying the pilot reported an engine failure right before the plane went down. There will be an investigation. NTSB might take about a year, but they'll investigate what happened there.
And a Fox News alert on the economy. The U.S. adding a surprisingly strong 353,000 jobs last month. Unemployment stays at 3.7%. Along with the surge in hiring, the new year also kicking off with skyrocketing job cuts. What to make of all of it? Edward Lawrence of Fox Business is at the Labor Department. Hi, Edward.
Hey, Dana. Yeah, and this number, 353,000 jobs created, obviously a big one. But it also, the last time that happened was January of 2023, a year ago. Now, the 3.7% unemployment rate, that's bad news for anybody that wanted to see an interest rate cut. Now, you have to take these numbers with kind of a grain of salt. This is a re-benchmarking of the data here, and that means the numbers will be a little bit skewed, and this report is not carried with a lot of weight as the rest of the jobs report for the rest of the year. But you can see trends in this report. For example, government hiring, again, one of the top 4 job sectors of growth. Over the past 3 months, government has hired an average of 40,300 people per month. Again, this blowout report confusing the experts. Listen.
About this 353 headline number just underscores the point I made about the wild seasonal adjustments for the month of January. Again, when we flip the calendar from December to January, the economy loses 3.2 million jobs as all those holiday workers disappear. And the ability of the BLS to measure that with any, fine point is ridiculous. And I think this number will be revised lower.
So there's an underlying weakness that could show up in the next report. Career firm Challenger, Gray, and Christmas found that planned layoffs jumped 136% from December, and the January marked the lowest planned hiring for companies since 2009 when the measure began. Now, we've seen layoffs already, announcements from Amazon, Google, UPS, Macy's, Citigroup, BlackRock. The list grows daily. Now, the reason, the forecasted economic slowdown and increased costs from inflation, which the president is now back to blaming companies.
But for all we've done to bring prices down, there are still too many corporations in America ripping people off. Price gouging, junk fees, greedflation, shrinkflation.
So in about 30 minutes, I'm going to ask the acting labor secretary about all of this. Dana?
Okay. I'm going to call you so you can explain it to me more in depth. Everyone should follow Edward Lawrence on X, too. Thank you.
Do you have any plan to travel to Ohio?
I've made it clear to them anything they need is available.
I haven't had the occasion to go to East Palestine. There's a lot going on here, and I just haven't been able to break.
The president will visit when it's most helpful to the community.
So now things are changing. President Biden will visit East Palestine, Ohio, first time since a train derailed about a year ago. Tomorrow marks 1 year since 50 cars derailed, spilling toxic chemicals and sparking a fire. That town has not fully recovered. Some people there say they feel forgotten. East Palestine resident Ashley McCullum is with us now. And Ashley, good morning to you and thank you for your time. I heard what your mayor said. He said, I'm a Republican. I don't know what your affiliation is, and I don't really care, but what I'd like to know is how you feel about the commander-in-chief finally coming to your town.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. And, you know, it has been something that we've extended from the beginning, and it's almost like you set up a dinner party and you wait for them to come. They're like, well, we're not coming now. Then you hear it again and again and again, and it kind of feels like you lose your enthusiasm, like anything's going to be done. And that's kind of where we are now, because we really needed the help in the beginning, and we still do need the help. But is anything going to actually be done? Is it going to be another extended invitation?
So that takes me to the next question. Here are the numbers in your town. 175,000 tons of soil have been taken out. 35 million gallons of hazardous water removed. 100 million air monitoring tests collected. There has been no federal disaster declared. The government's saying that the train company, Norfolk Southern, has gone a long way in helping you. Do you believe that to be the case?
I mean, it's really difficult because the majority of what they've removed is on their own property with the railroad. We still are asking and have been asking for testing to be done in our home. So it feels like a majority of the people in town are being neglected in this whole cleanup. We're not given extra tests we request. So, I mean, nothing is really being done for us.
So what you would want then is more tests to make sure that the environment in which you call home is okay to live there.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the MSDS sheets, or I know they changed the name, but if you look at those, some workers can only work in these circumstances for 8 to 12 hours for at least one of the chemicals that were dispersed into town.
Ashley, do you drink?
Think all of these chemicals.
Ashley, do you drink the water there?
No, I'm actually still relocated in a hotel. I haven't lived in my home since February 3rd. I do hear a lot of people in town are afraid to drink the water. They're reaching out, trying to find anyone that's giving out water. No one trusts it.
Here was that exact question at the White House this week.
When the president is in East Palestine, will he drink the water there?
The president's focus has been to do everything that he can to support this community from day one. I'm not going to get into some sort of political stunts about drinking water.
I don't know if that happens or not, but what's your thought?
I mean, drinking water isn't political. Drinking water is not political in any way. So I'm not sure why that statement was even directed to that reporter, because that's not the truth. I mean, we're here drinking it, so I would assume that he would. I mean, we saw everyone in the beginning drinking water, but they said these chemicals didn't reach the aquifer yet. So some people in town haven't had their wells tested. They haven't had things tested properly, and they still want these things tested.
Yeah.
So why can't he come here and drink from someone's home?
He's been to Maui, been to Florida for the hurricanes. Will you welcome him?
If he's going to do something, I mean, this is a human situation. It doesn't matter what party you're from. If someone's in a burning car and I go over them to save them, I'm not going to say, what party are you affiliated with? Well, you know, I'm not going to save you, or I am going to save you. We're all people and we're struggling, and we're in a terrible situation. Nothing like what we had the day before February 3rd, 2023.
Okay. Ashley, good luck to you. Still living in a hotel. Ashley McCollum?
Yep. And,
yes.
And if anyone does want to help, I do have a GoFundMe. I know that I put it out there. We're stuck on our own right now. We have to make it out on our own.
Thank you, Ashley, for sharing your story. Good luck to you, okay? We'll stay in contact. Thank you.
Anytime you appease nations like Iran and others, you're just asking for more trouble. So this is an administration that their national security policy and plan is really out of control.
Iran getting the kids' glove treatment, carrying out its aggression across the Middle East with impunity. So, will the Biden administration hit back hard after the deaths of U.S. soldiers by an Iranian proxy? Plus, Texas taking a tough stand against illegal border crossings, and now the migrant crisis shifts to California. New data shows the border crisis shifting west. Customs and Border Protection sources say the Del Rio sector, which includes Eagle Pass, Texas, saw a 76% drop in migrant crossings last month. That was after Texas boosted its own efforts to crack down. A large majority of illegal crossings now coming from Arizona and California. Data from the last week of January shows more than 32,000 migrants were apprehended on the southern border. Over 70% were caught in Arizona and California. So we'll see how those governors.
Well, meanwhile, San Diego remains one of the worst areas for human trafficking. The FBI is saying that more than 8,000 people are smuggled across the southern border every single year. One survivor who was kidnapped and trafficked when she was a teenager is now sharing her story, and it is something else. Christina Coleman is live now with more on that. Good morning.
Hi, Bill. Yeah, I want to warn you, some of the details in this report are graphic. Street gangs working for the cartels are contributing to the onslaught of human trafficking in this border state. Human trafficking is a roughly $810 million underground industry annually in San Diego County alone. During this bust in a high prostitution area, law enforcement rescued 8 teenagers ranging in age from 13 to 17 years old. They also arrested 48 traffickers and criminal buyers. The district attorney says most of the victims involved in sex trafficking in San Diego County are local, but about 20% of them are brought from across the border.
Cartels definitely have an influence on sex trafficking, but we're finding that it's more our street gangs, which work for the cartels.
Thousands of victims are trafficked in San Diego County each year, and Keelan Washington says she was one of them. She shared with me the horrors of this crime. She says she was a 14-year-old high school freshman in San Diego when she was kidnapped, beaten, forced into a sex trafficking ring, and sold in more than a dozen states. Keelan says she was raped repeatedly and that her trafficker would torture her when she tried to escape.
What I remember is him then for the first time physically beating me. And as he's kicking me and hitting me, telling me that I can't leave, and that if I tried to leave, not only would he kill me, but he'd kill my mother too.
Washington was finally able to escape after 3.5 years. Now she works with law enforcement to draw awareness to the prevalence of this crime. Also, just last month, during a single week-long operation to rescue victims of human trafficking, law enforcement agencies throughout California made a total of 539 arrests and recovered 55 victims, including 11 who are minors.
Wow.
Bill?
And the beat goes on, unfortunately. Christina, thank you for that in Los Angeles today.
Iran is being undeterred. They're pushing us around in the Mideast. They're not going to stop until we hit Iran itself. I don't want to invade Iran, but I want them to stop killing Americans.
It's been nearly a week since the drone strike from an Iranian proxy that killed 3 U.S. soldiers and wounded dozens of others in Jordan. But at least for now, President Biden is still keeping his powder dry despite promising to respond. Joining us now is Dan Senor, former foreign policy advisor to President Bush. Listen to Lloyd Austin. This was at the press conference yesterday where he was asked about the telegraphing of attacks.
Has there been too much telegraphing, or is the point not to kill any Iranian commanders?
In terms of telegraphing about strikes and whether or not people leave or will have left, you know, I won't speculate on any of that. I would just tell you that, you know, we will have a multi-tiered response.
CBS News reported that U.S. officials have confirmed that plans have been approved for a series of strikes over a number of days against targets, including Iranian personnel and facilities inside Iraq and Syria. What do you make of all this?
Unless the Biden administration, the U.S. government, hits Iranian military assets, wherever they are, including possibly in Iran, I'm skeptical it will have much effect. I believe that Iranian decision-making bakes into their planning the risk that their proxies will be hit, that the U.S. will respond to the proxies as we have done against the Houthis. They have believed that by hitting the proxies, Iran's assets, Iran's governing capacities are protected. Until we start puncturing that risk assessment by them, I think this is futile.
The other question that came up during that briefing was, you're going after infrastructure, but you're sparing lives. Now, what we learned from the hits in Yemen is that a lot of those leaders, they got out of there. And those who operate the anti-ship, the rocket fire, they fled.
Yeah.
And the Iranian proxies have likely done the same thing already, according to Jen and Lucas Tomlinson.
Yeah, look, I think that's likely, possible. I just think at the end of the day, if you look at all the threats roaming around the Middle East these days, there's one key source, and it's Iran, right? And the Biden administration believes we can get through 2024, key point, get through 2024 without an escalation against Iran. They do not want, they've made their peace, quote unquote, with Israel fighting Hamas in Gaza. They know that they can't contain, right? But they do not want to see escalation elsewhere in the region, and the U.S. escalating with Iran in their minds, things, has cascading effects. Things could spiral out of control. The reality is, it's not the U.S. escalating against Iran. It's been Iran escalating against the U.S.
Right.
And the likelihood of the escalation continuing will only be so if the U.S. does not respond. The risk is in not responding.
The other thing that happened this week is the UK Foreign Minister David Cameron talked about the possibility of a Palestinian state in the aftermath of October 7th. Watch here.
What we've always said is we believe in a two-state solution, a secure Israel within its borders and a secure and stable Palestine within its borders. That's long been our position. And of course, as part of that, Britain, along with other countries, would recognize Palestine as a country and recognize Palestine at the United Nations.
Israel get a...
Hello, xin chào các bạn. Chào mừng các bạn đã quay trở lại với channel của mình. Và video ngày hôm nay, mình sẽ hướng dẫn cho các bạn cách làm một con rồng như thế này nhé. Và để làm một con rồng như thế này thì đầu tiên các bạn sẽ chuẩn bị cho mình thứ nhất đó chính là giấy màu. Đấy, như thế này thì các bạn sẽ chuẩn bị những cái loại giấy màu mà các bạn yêu thích nha. Tiếp theo thì các bạn sẽ chuẩn bị cho mình đó chính là một cây kéo như thế này nha. Và để làm cái con rồng bằng giấy này thì nó khá là đơn giản nha các bạn. Thì các bạn chỉ cần theo dõi và cùng làm theo với mình thôi nha. Đây thì mình sẽ chọn cái tờ giấy màu đỏ này để làm cái con rồng nha các bạn. Ok. Và cái bước đầu tiên các bạn sẽ cắt cái tờ giấy hình chữ nhật này thành một cái tờ giấy hình vuông cho mình. Bằng cách là các bạn sẽ gấp cái phần giấy này vào trong. Gấp phần giấy này vào trong. Sao cho cái đường này nè nó sẽ trùng với lại cái đường bên này. Và nó sẽ tạo được cái phần mũi nhọn như cái đỉnh này. Các bạn sẽ gấp xuống như này cho mình. Các bạn sẽ gấp vào như thế này. Đấy. Thì các bạn sẽ gấp lại như thế này cho mình. Và sau đó các bạn sẽ miết cái phần này lại nha. Các bạn sẽ miết cái phần này lại. Và cắt bỏ đi cái phần phía dưới cho mình. Thì mình sẽ được một cái tờ giấy hình vuông nha các bạn. Đấy, thì các bạn sẽ miết cái phần này lại cho mình nha. Miết cái phần này lại. Đây, thì các bạn sẽ được một cái phần giấy như thế này nha. Và sau đó thì các bạn sẽ cắt bỏ đi cái phần phía dưới này cho mình. Đây. Và sau khi đã cắt bỏ đi cái phần giấy này thì các bạn sẽ được một cái tờ giấy hình vuông như thế này các bạn. Và bước tiếp theo các bạn sẽ cắt cái tờ giấy nhỏ này thành một tờ giấy hình vuông. Thì các bạn cũng sẽ làm như vậy nha. Bạn sẽ gấp xíu cái phần giấy này vào trong nè. Đấy. Đây. Các bạn sẽ gấp lại như thế này cho mình. Và sau đó các bạn sẽ miết cái phần này lại nè. Đấy. Và các bạn sẽ cắt bỏ đi cái phần này cho mình. Đấy, thì mình sẽ có được một cái hình vuông nhỏ như thế này nha các bạn. Đấy, để các bạn sẽ chuẩn bị cho mình hai cái hình vuông như thế này nha. Ok, về ở cái phần giấy này nè, thì các bạn đã gấp lại như vậy rồi đúng không? Đấy, thì các bạn sẽ miết cái phần này cho nó kỹ đây giúp mình nha. Đấy, như thế này. Về các bạn sẽ có được một cái phần nếp ở ngay chỗ này, đúng không? Thì bước tiếp theo, bạn sẽ làm cho mình đó, chính là các bạn sẽ gấp cái phần giấy này vào trong, sao cho cái đường đây nè, sao cho cái đường này nó sẽ trùng với lại cái đường ở giữa này nè. Đấy, như thế này nha các bạn. Và các bạn sẽ miết cái phần này lại cho mình nha. Các bạn sẽ miết cái phần này cho nó thật là thẳng đây cho mình. Đấy, thì các bạn sẽ miết ra như thế này cho mình. Và tiếp theo các bạn sẽ mở cái phần giấy này ra. Đấy. Đấy, thì mình sẽ được một cái phần nếp ngay chỗ này nha các bạn. Đấy. Và tiếp theo các bạn sẽ gấp tương tự như vậy thôi, nhưng mà theo cái hướng là ngược lại. Thành ra các bạn gấp lên này, đúng không?